Hi guys, my name is Nonema Tigela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about Mthokozi Sithwala, the man inside the house, how Mthokozi Sithwala cracked the Senzo Meyiwa story. Okay, before we do that, guys, please make sure you do not forget to like, to share, to comment, and most importantly, please make sure you are subscribed on the channel. Please make sure you are watching the videos up until the end and you are watching the ads that are coming through. When you are doing that, you will be supporting this channel financially and in numbers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Now, there are witnesses who observe history, and there are witnesses who sit inside it. One thing for sure, something happens one way or the other. On the night Senzo Meyiwa was killed, Mthokozi Sithwala wasn't outside. He wasn't arriving later. He wasn't reconstructing rumors. He was inside the house. And that is why his testimony matters. And that is why it is so dangerous. Because if Twala is believed, the state survive. The state case survive. If Twala collapses, the entire case begins to rot from the inside. So today we expose how one witness managed to support the state's version while at the same time poisoning its credibility without realizing what he is doing. That is why we are going to deal with Mthokozi Sithwala's testimony. I believe that we are going to start from point A to B, maybe 7 points that we are going to talk about. This is the exclusive truth behind Mthokozi Sithwala's testimony. Let's go. Part 1, the role he was meant to play. Let's deal with that. From the start, Twala was supposed to be simple. Confirm the robbery narrative, place 2 intruders in the house, establish 1 firearm, describe chaos, not control, remove suspicion from anyone inside the house, especially Longwe Twala. If you've noticed how they were removing, especially Longwe Twala, in anything. His version on the surface delivers exactly that. If you are listening to him for the first time, when Bailo is taking him through his evidence in chief, that's what you will believe. His version is 2 men enter, they demand phones and money, a scuffle breaks out, a gun discharges, sensor falls, no mastermind, no setup, no internal shooter. Nix. Just a robbery gone wrong. On paper, that is gold for the prosecution team. But trials are not decided on paper, right? They are decided on pressure. We will see. Number 2, the moment his memory became selective, that is when we were like, sir, what are you doing now? Focus. You were telling us about an intruder story here. What is this now? Under cross-examination, Twala's testimony begins to fracture, not loud, but strategical. The way he was doing things, it was very strategical. And he thinks he ate. I think he thought he ate. There was a gun problem. Twala says, I don't know firearms. I can't describe guns. That's what he said. Yet his statement contains a description, an old revolver. Short, not modern. When confronted, he retreats. That could have come from the sketch artist. How? When the sketch artist gets information from the person who is being interviewed by the sketch artist. Doesn't make sense. This is not a small issue. Courts don't punish witnesses for not knowing. They punish witnesses for knowing only when it helps them. At that moment, Twala doesn't sound confused. He sounds defensive. Number 3, the scuffle, where everyone was except him. Where everyone was except him. The most violent moment of the night happens in the kitchen. Crutches used as weapons, an intruder being beaten, a gun present, and yet, according to Twala, he wasn't part of it. He was focused on a child. He grabbed his phone. He fled the crime scene. In other words, everyone was there. Everything happened, but he was somehow not involved. This is where defense lawyers smell blood. because in real life, chaos pulls people in. In testimony, chaos conveniently pushes witnesses out. Have you noticed? Okay. Number 4, the route that shouldn't matter, but it does. Let's look into that. Then comes the timeline fight. Zandile Khumalo speaks of going to a party. Twala says, no, we never went there. We went to Wimpy, then Soweto. This isn't about food or petrol or geography. It's about truth alignment, because that's what they did, and they are fighting with truth now. When people experience the same night, their emotions differ, but their roots rarely do. They can't differ. Once timelines diverge, courts ask one question: who is remembering and who is reconstructing? Number 5, the language leap, assumption, squandering as a fact. Twala testified about how he identified the intruders: English commands and Zulu Sotho language. Tone, accent, from that conclusions are drawn, but defense strips it bare. Did you hear a full conversation or did you infer? And inference is not observations. And when inferences enters evidence, certainty leaves. You are not sure. You are not quite sure with what you are saying. Number 6, the allegation that poisons everything. Then comes the testimony that changes the temperature of the courtroom. Twala tells the court that years later, in 2019, police fetched him from Durban, not for comfort, not for clarity, but he says for coercion. And he alleges he was restrained, suffocated, assaulted for hours, forced to confess, pressured to implicate others. He names officers. He speaks of humiliation. He says he reported it. Whether the court ultimately accepts this or not, is not almost secondary, but it's something to be looked into. Because once a witness alleges torture, every statement becomes contaminated. Every identification becomes suspect. Every investigative step becomes questionable. You cannot unring that bell. But now, all of that he was mentioning because he was being investigated for case 375, but he mentions it to case 636. And right now, it's not going to help in this situation, because the investigators that he's mentioning, it's Makubo and Buthelezi, and they are investigators of case 375. And this one of Gininda, this information, perhaps it was trying something. We'll talk about that in the next video. But right now, let's focus. And then number 7, what Twala really did to this case is as follows. Mthokozisi Twala did something extraordinary. He saved the state narrative, right? And sabotaged its integrity at the same time. That is exactly what he did. He gives them robbery to intruders, 1 gun, but he also gives the defense statement contamination, police misconduct allegations, witness pressure, reliability doubts. That is not a neutral witness. That is a structural false lie. That is what he is. And also, let's talk about the unspoken truth. Twala was meant to be the clue. Instead, he became the crack. Because in one body, the court saw both. The version the state wants you to believe and the system the defense wants you to distrust. And once a witness does that, the trial stops being about who pulled the trigger and starts being about who broke the investigation. That is the real legacy of Mthokozisi Twala's testimony. That is what you could find from what he was saying. I don't know about you, but I think Mthokozisi Twala did not do justice for the state case, but he did justice for the defense case. What are your thoughts when it comes to this? Let's talk in the comment section. I want to hear your views. Thank you so much. I will see you on our next video. Bye-bye.